You know, there comes a point in life when the noise starts to quiet down a bit. The kids are grown, the long working days are behind us, and for the first time in what feels like forever, we have the chance to just breathe. To sit in our favorite chair, enjoy a cup of tea, and hear our own thoughts again. Some people call it retirement. I like to think of it as returning to ourselves. But as peaceful as that sounds, it doesn't always feel that way. For some, these years bring a quiet storm, not because of what's happening outside, but because of who's still standing around us. People we've known for decades, people we've trusted, even loved. Sometimes they change, and sometimes we change. Either way, one truth becomes clear. The company we keep matters more now than ever before. That's what we're talking about today. 3 kinds of people you must avoid in old age, even if they're family. It's not about cutting people off or turning bitter. Quite the opposite, really. It's about peace. It's about protecting your heart, your health, your joy. Because at this stage in life, you've earned the right to live peacefully. You fought the battles, done the heavy lifting, and now it's your time. Let me tell you a story that might sound familiar. I once knew a woman. Let's call her Margaret. In her 70s, she was sharp, witty, and had a heart big enough to warm the whole street. She had 3 grown children and a calendar filled with birthdays, doctor's appointments, and the occasional garden club meeting. But every time I saw her, there was a sadness behind her smile. Not the kind that comes from loneliness. This was something different, quieter, heavier. Turns out, one of her children, her eldest, had grown controlling over the years, always questioning her decisions, telling her what she should be doing, criticizing her choice of clothes, her diet, even the friends she kept. And Margaret, being the loving mother she was, tolerated it. For years, she'd smile and say, "Oh, he just cares about me, that's all." But you could tell it wore her down. And that brings us to the first kind of person you need to be careful with as you get older, the controller. This person may speak with love, may say they have your best interest at heart. But in reality, they chip away at your independence. They may be your son, your daughter, even a spouse. They tell you when to go to the doctor, how to spend your money, who to trust. At first, it might feel like help. But over time, it starts to feel like prison walls closing in. Now, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with support. We all need help now and then. But there's a big difference between helping someone and handling them. The moment you start to feel like a project instead of a person, something's gone wrong. Here's how it usually shows up. You mention wanting to take a trip on your own, maybe to visit an old friend or see someplace you've always wanted to go. And instead of encouragement, you get a list of reasons why it's a bad idea. You shouldn't travel alone, they say. It's not safe. Or, that money could be better spent on something else. They may not even realize it, but their words begin to shrink your world. And little by little, your confidence takes a hit. You stop speaking up. You stop dreaming. You become smaller, quieter. And here's the thing. This is not what these years are meant for. They are meant for expanding, for becoming even more yourself, not less. If someone in your life makes you feel like you're no longer capable, no longer wise, no longer worthy of making your own choices, that's a red flag, no matter who they are. You have the right to live these years with dignity, not just in body, but in spirit. I know it's hard, especially when it's someone you love. But setting boundaries doesn't mean you love them less. It means you love yourself enough to say, I appreciate your concern, but I will make my own decisions. That sentence right there, it's not just words. It's armor. It's freedom. And here's something else I want to tell you. It's never too late to take your power back. Never. Whether you're 60, 70, or 90. Independence isn't about doing everything on your own. It's about having the final say over your own life. Now, let's talk about another kind of person that can drain the joy right out of your golden years. You'll know them by the way you feel after spending time with them. It's that heavy feeling in your chest, that tiredness that doesn't come from walking or chores. I'm talking about the chronic complainer. You know the type. The weather's always terrible. The news is always bad. Their back hurts, their knee hurts. The world is going to the dogs. Every conversation is coated in gloom. And if you offer a bit of light, a joke, a compliment, a bit of good news, they brush it off or twist it into something negative. Now listen,
Доброе
I'm not
утро.
saying you should avoid
Какой
people who are
чудесный
going through
помидор.
tough times. Not at all. We all have seasons of sorrow. I'm talking about the people who choose to live in the storm, even when the skies are clear. When you're around someone like that, it's like sitting in a room with all the windows closed. No fresh air, no sunlight, just the same stale energy, day after day. And if you're not careful, their storm becomes your storm. I once had a neighbor, George. Kind man, always polite. But every single time I saw him, every time, it was like flipping to the worst page in the newspaper. He'd start off with something like, well, another lousy day, even if the sun was shining. Then he'd talk about how the world was falling apart, how nothing's like it used to be, how young people these days don't have any manners. After 10 minutes, you'd feel like crawling under a blanket and staying there. The trouble is, when you spend enough time with someone like that, their words start to echo in your own head. You stop seeing the good. You forget to laugh. Even your body starts to feel heavier. That's not a coincidence. Studies have shown that constant exposure to negativity can raise your stress levels, lower your immune system, and even affect your sleep. And here's the kicker, they often don't even realize they're doing it. For them, it's just how they talk. But that doesn't mean you have to keep listening. You're not being rude by stepping away from that kind of energy. You're protecting your peace. You can still be kind, still care, but keep some distance. Think of it like walking in the rain. You don't have to stand there and get soaked just because someone else forgot their umbrella. Now, maybe you're thinking, but I've known them for years, or I don't want to hurt their feelings. And I understand that. Truly, I do. But here's something to remember. Protecting your joy is not selfish. It's necessary. You've worked hard, lived long, and now your days are more precious than ever. Don't waste them wading through someone else's bitterness. And if you're someone who's noticed a bit of that negativity creeping into your own speech, don't worry, it happens. Life has its hardships, no doubt about it. But every day, we get to choose what we focus on. We can either look at the weeds or the wildflowers growing right beside them. So we've talked about the controller and the complainer. People who may be close, even dear, but whose presence can start to cloud our own well-being. And let me tell you something important. It takes real courage to admit when someone we love is not good for our spirit. But it also takes wisdom. And wisdom, my friend, is something you've earned in spades. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself, and even for them, is to take a step back, to protect your energy, to choose peace. Now, as we begin to reflect on the company we keep and the energy we allow into our lives, let's take a moment, a deep breath, because what's ahead isn't just about avoiding people. It's about inviting in something better, something lighter, something freer. Let's keep walking that path, together. You know, it's interesting how much lighter life feels when you start clearing space, not just in your home, but in your heart. When you no longer feel like you have to carry the weight of other people's opinions, their moods, their control. It's like finally opening a window after a long winter. You breathe better, you sleep better, and you live better. But there's still one more kind of person we need to talk about today. The one that's often the hardest to spot. Not because they shout or argue or drain you with constant complaining, but because they smile, they act sweet, they nod along, but deep down, they don't clap when you win. They don't cheer when you grow. In fact, they shrink a little every time you shine. That's the third kind of person you must be careful with in old age. The quiet underminer. They might be your cousin, your friend from church, even your own sibling. They don't say anything overtly cruel. They might not even raise their voice. But pay attention to the little things. The tone when you share something good. The way they change the subject when it's about your success. Or how they always seem to know just the words to make you doubt yourself. Imagine you tell them you've started walking every morning and you feel more energetic. Instead of saying, "That's great," they say, "Careful, don't overdo it at your age." Or you mention you're thinking of joining a choir or taking up painting again, and they say, "Aren't you a little old for that?" All with a chuckle, of course, as if it's nothing. But it's not nothing. Words have power. And these small digs, these little jabs dressed as jokes, they sink into your skin slowly. You start second-guessing your excitement. You begin to shrink your dreams just a bit, until one day they disappear altogether. I remember hearing about a man named Frank. Lived a quiet life after retirement. Took great joy in woodworking. He built birdhouses, walking sticks, little benches for the park near his home. People loved his work. His hands were steady. His heart was in it. One day, he told a longtime friend he was thinking of selling a few pieces at the local craft fair. Instead of encouragement, the friend laughed and said, "What are you going to do? Compete with 20-year-olds on Etsy?" Just a passing comment, a throwaway line. But Frank never signed up for that fair. Not because he didn't believe in his work, but because that one sentence planted a seed of doubt. That's how the quiet underminer works. Not with storms, but with shadows. And shadows, if you don't call them out, can darken even the brightest parts of your life. Now, this kind of person can be especially hard to walk away from, because they often wear the mask of closeness. Oh, we go way back, you might say. They've always been in my life. But history doesn't excuse harm. Just because someone's been around for decades doesn't mean they deserve to keep walking with you now. Ask yourself this: do I feel bigger after spending time with them, or smaller? Do I feel seen, heard, respected? Or do I leave feeling a little unsure of myself? Like maybe I was too much, or not enough? It doesn't matter how old we are. Everyone deserves friends and family who celebrate their joys and encourage their passions. Not ones who quietly chip away at them with backhanded compliments and subtle digs. And here's the thing. Sometimes the quiet underminer doesn't even know they're doing it. Sometimes it's their own insecurity talking. Maybe they see you growing, glowing, living, and it reminds them of their own regrets. That's not your burden to carry. You can love someone without letting their shadow fall over your light. So what do? How do you deal with this kind of person? Well, you don't have to confront them with fire. You can simply start to place your energy elsewhere. Limit how much you share. Keep your wins sacred. Protect the things that bring you joy. Slowly, gently, you can create a little distance between their doubt and your dreams. And more importantly, you fill that space with people who do clap when you win, who tell you, go for it, who say, you've still got it, and mean it. Because trust me, you do still have it. You're not too old to begin something new, to try something different, to feel alive again. Don't let someone else's small world keep you from living big. And if you've been holding back, if there's something you've wanted to do, say, try, learn, or revisit, consider this your sign, your permission, not from me, but from yourself. You see, when we remove those negative voices, whether loud or quiet, what we gain is clarity, space to hear our own voice again. And let me tell you, that voice is wise. It's been through storms and seasons. It's earned every line and every laugh, and it deserves to be heard. So maybe today is the day you stop shrinking for others. Maybe today is the day you say, no more controlling, no more complaining, no more quiet undermining. Maybe today is the day you claim your joy without guilt. Because here's the truth that gets clearer with age. Not everyone can come with you. Not everyone should. And that's okay. Some people are part of your story, but not your future. And when you finally accept that, a whole new chapter opens up. One with fewer critics and more cheerleaders, fewer burdens and more peace. And no matter what anyone says, you are not being dramatic, selfish, or cold by protecting your peace. You are being wise. You are being kind to yourself. And that kindness, it's long overdue. You've given enough. You've endured enough. Now it's time to receive, to heal, to enjoy. You've earned the right to wake up and feel light in your heart, in your mind, and in your home. Let yourself feel that freedom. Have you ever noticed how quiet things become when you stop trying to please everyone? It's like stepping off a noisy street and into your own garden. The air feels calmer. The birds sound clearer. And most of all, you start to hear yourself again. That's one of the unexpected gifts of growing older. Not the silence, but the choice of silence. You finally get to decide who deserves your time, your energy, your attention. And if that decision means stepping away from people who make you feel small or unsettled, that's not harsh. That's wisdom. Now, up to this point, we've talked about the controller, the one who tries to run your life under the name of help. We've talked about the chronic complainer, the one who brings a storm with them everywhere they go. And we've talked about the quiet underminer, the one who smiles on the outside but quietly roots against your joy. But there's something just as important as understanding who to avoid. And that's understanding why we sometimes let these people stay in our lives longer than we should. Sometimes it's guilt, sometimes it's fear, and sometimes it's habit. You get used to someone being around. You tell yourself, well, that's just how they are. Or, I've known them forever. And slowly, you build your peace around their behavior like stacking furniture around a broken window. You learn to live with the draft instead of fixing the glass. But let me ask you something. What if peace isn't something you have to build around others? What if peace is something you build within yourself and then decide who gets to share it with you? Because here's the truth that often takes years to learn. The people who truly love you will not make you feel guilty for growing. They won't hold your past over your head. They won't ask you to dim your light so they can shine brighter. People like that don't just bring comfort, they bring healing. And the older we get, the more we realize that healing isn't just about bodies and bones. It's about relationships. It's about energy. It's about whether we feel safe in someone's presence. Not just physically safe, but emotionally safe. Safe to speak. Safe to dream. Safe to be quiet. Safe to be yourself. And let's be honest, it's not always family that brings that kind of safety. Sometimes, family is where the deepest wounds were made. I've heard it too many times to count. A sister who never forgave. A brother who always belittled. A son or daughter who talks to you like a burden instead of a blessing. And because it's family, you stay quiet. You let things slide. You convince yourself that blood means loyalty. But blood isn't love. Love is love. Respect is respect. Kindness is kindness. And sometimes you'll find more of it in a neighbor or a friend than you ever did around your childhood table. That doesn't mean you stop loving your family. It means you stop giving them the power to hurt you. You can set boundaries with love. You can say, I care about you, but I won't let you speak to me like that. You can say, I'm not available for this conversation right now. You can even say nothing and quietly walk away when you feel your spirit being pulled down. You don't need anyone's permission to protect your peace, not even your own guilt. Now I know some of this is easier said than done. When you've been the caretaker all your life, when you've been the one who smoothed things over, who held the family together, it can feel almost unnatural to start saying no. But no is not a rejection. It's a redirection. It's you choosing peace over pressure. You choosing to spend your time where you feel valued, not just used. Let me share a story with you. There was a man named Harold, mid-70s, retired teacher. Very gentle soul. He had 2 daughters. One called him often, invited him to dinner, sent pictures of her kids. The other only called when she needed something, money, a ride, someone to vent to. And every time she called, Harold dropped everything. He'd drive across town, write the check, listen for hours. And every time he did, he felt worse. Not just emotionally, but physically. Tired, drained, like someone had pulled the plug on his whole day. One afternoon, he told me, I love her, but I feel like she doesn't see me. I'm just useful. And I told him something simple. You're allowed to love her from a distance. He didn't have to cut her off. He just had to stop sacrificing his peace every time the phone rang. And so he started letting some calls go to voicemail. He took longer to reply to texts. And slowly, he felt himself coming back to life. He even took up guitar again, something he hadn't touched in over 30 years. You see, when you start protecting your peace, you make space for joy again. And you don't need a dozen people clapping for you. Sometimes, all you need is one good friend, or your own reflection in the mirror, saying, I'm proud of you. You don't have to explain your boundaries. You don't have to argue for your worth. You just have to know that these years, these precious years, you only get to live them once. And you deserve to live them light, not burdened with emotional debt, not trapped in old roles that no longer fit, not dragged down by people who can't or won't celebrate who you are now. You are not the fixer. You are not the therapist. You are not the punching bag. Not anymore. You are the main character in your own life now. And every character who enters your story from this point on, they should add peace, not take it away. It's not selfish. It's sacred. Think about that the next time someone makes you feel like you owe them a piece of yourself just because of the past. You owe no one your joy. You can be kind without being a doormat. You can be generous without being drained. And you can still love people without letting them camp in your life rent-free while you pay the emotional cost. So if any of this is ringing true for you, If you're thinking of someone right now, someone who leaves you tired, confused, second-guessing, or small, it's okay to take a breath. It's okay to feel that grief. Because yes, sometimes setting boundaries feels like loss. But in time, you'll see it for what it really is. Freedom. You are not being cold. You are not overreacting. You are simply coming home to yourself. One of the things they don't tell you about getting older is that your heart becomes more finely tuned, not weaker, sharper. You start to notice things you used to brush off. The pause before someone responds, the tension behind a smile, the feeling you get in your chest when you leave a conversation, not relief, not warmth, but something unsettled. You learn to trust those feelings. Not because you're paranoid or sensitive, but because your life has taught you to recognize patterns. You've seen how small comments can lead to big regrets, how long silences in relationships can turn into permanent distance. You've seen what happens when you let things slide too long. And at this stage in life, you don't have time to waste on people who don't bring peace. You can't afford to hand out your energy like candy to everyone who comes knocking. That doesn't mean you stop loving people. It means you stop allowing their behavior to erode your sense of self. Now, maybe you're sitting there thinking, but what if the person I need to distance myself from is someone I truly love? That's the hardest part, isn't it? When the controller, the complainer, or the underminer is someone you've held in your heart for years. Maybe someone you raised, maybe someone who raised you. But love and boundaries can live in the same house. Setting boundaries doesn't mean shutting the door. Sometimes it just means not leaving it wide open all the time. It means learning how to say, "I'll talk to you tomorrow, not today." It means leaving the family gathering a little earlier. It means protecting your peace without needing a dramatic exit. Because here's something you learn the longer you live. You don't always need to make a scene. Sometimes, the quiet choices are the strongest ones. The choice to disengage from drama. The choice to say less. The choice to stop explaining yourself. That kind of quiet strength comes with age, with experience, with knowing that your time on this earth is precious, and you're not going to waste it begging for respect that should have been given freely. But let's pause for a moment. Because this conversation isn't just about avoiding toxic people. It's also about inviting the right ones in. Have you ever had someone in your life, maybe not even for long, who just made you feel like you could breathe? Someone who didn't try to fix you or push you or compete with you. Someone who just sat with you, laughed with you, saw you. Those people, they're golden. And the beauty is, you can still meet people like that at any age. We tend to think friendship is something that happens in our 20s or 30s, or when our kids are in school. But some of the strongest, most freeing friendships happen later in life. When the noise dies down, when you no longer care about impressing anyone, when you can sit on a bench with someone, say almost nothing, and still feel understood. That's the kind of energy you deserve around you. People who don't just tolerate you, they value you. People who don't drain you, they fill you back up. And sometimes, to make room for those people, you've got to clear out what no longer fits. It's like cleaning out a closet. You find things you used to wear all the time, things that once made you feel good, but now they're tight, worn, or just don't suit you anymore. You don't hate those clothes, but you're not going to keep wearing something that makes you uncomfortable just because you used to. Same goes for relationships. If someone's energy no longer fits your life, it's okay to let it go. You're not being cruel, you're being honest. And here's a little secret most people don't talk about. When you let go of the wrong people, The right people often show up faster than you'd expect. It might be a neighbor you never really talked to before, someone you meet at a book club or an exercise class, or even waiting in line at the pharmacy. It might be someone you knew long ago, but never really connected with until now. Because now, you're different. You're clearer. You're no longer trying to fit into anyone else's expectations. You're no longer twisting yourself into someone you're not. That kind of authenticity? It attracts people like a lighthouse attracts ships. Quietly, without effort. But you have to create the space first. You can't receive new light if your days are filled with old shadows. And listen, even if you don't find a big group of new people, even if it's just you for a while, that's okay too. There is nothing wrong with enjoying your own company. In fact, it's one of the greatest signs of growth. Imagine this. You wake up, make a cup of coffee, open the window. No noise, no tension, no explaining yourself to anyone. Just you, your thoughts, your peace. That's not loneliness. That's freedom. And when the right people do come along, they'll step into that peace, not disrupt it. They'll understand you're quiet. They won't take it personally. They won't demand you become someone else to keep them happy. Because you've finally stopped pretending. You've stopped performing. Now, you're just being. And that, my friend, is the reward that comes from knowing who not to allow into your life. You get you back. You get your afternoons back, your rest, your joy, your laughter, and slowly, life becomes lighter. Not because everything around you is perfect, but because the people around you don't weigh you down. You were not put here to carry everyone else's burden. You've done your part. You've raised, worked, built, given, loved. Now it's your turn to receive. So say it with me. Not out loud, but in your heart. I deserve to live these years in peace. I deserve joy without explanation. I deserve to protect my energy, because you do. And the moment you start believing that, everything starts to change. There's a moment, somewhere between waking and rising, when everything feels still. The house is quiet. The world hasn't asked anything of you yet. And in that hush, there's a kind of truth about what matters and what doesn't. When you reach a certain age, you realize that peace is not a luxury. It's not something you have to earn or explain. It's your birthright. And anything, or anyone, that constantly interrupts that peace, well, they don't belong in the center of your life anymore. We've talked about the controller, the complainer, the underminer. The ones who pull at your spirit, press on your chest, shake your confidence, sometimes without even knowing it. And we've talked about the courage it takes to step back, to let go, to choose yourself after a lifetime of choosing everyone else first. But before we end this time together, I want to talk about what comes next. Because this isn't just a video about walking away. It's about walking toward something better, toward mornings that begin without dread, conversations that leave you lighter, days that are yours again. Simple joy, quiet, but deep. And it's important to say this. It's not too late. It never was. If you're breathing, you're becoming. Every single day is another chance to choose differently, to show up for yourself in ways you never did before. You may be older, yes, but that doesn't mean you're done growing. It means you're growing better. You might be surprised how quickly your life shifts when you begin protecting your energy. It might start small. A polite but firm, not today. A quiet exit from a phone call that always leaves you feeling hollow. A decision to spend your Sunday in the garden instead of at a table where your voice is ignored. You'll notice it in your body first. Less tension in your shoulders, fewer headaches, deeper sleep. Then you'll feel it in your mood. More laughter, more lightness, fewer days where you feel like you're carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations. And the people who truly care for you, they'll notice too. They'll say things like, "You seem more relaxed," or "You look younger somehow." That's not coincidence. That's what peace does. It softens you. It lifts you. It brings your spark back. Because the truth is, aging doesn't have to mean shrinking. It can mean expanding. It can mean finally stepping into the kind of life you always dreamed of, but were too busy or too burdened to live. That life doesn't have to be loud or flashy. It might be as simple as having a morning routine you love, a walk through the park where the trees know your name, a book that stirs something inside you, a friend who listens without fixing, a cup of tea at the exact time the light hits the window just right. That is not a small life. That is a beautiful one. And maybe, just maybe, you share that life with people who bring you peace. People who remind you of your worth, who say, "I'm glad you're here," not just with their words, but with their presence. People who don't take from you, but see you. That's who you make room for when you release the rest. And yes, some people might not understand your boundaries. They may call you distant, or selfish, or changed. But that's okay, because you have changed. And they don't have to understand your growth to respect your space. What matters is that you no longer twist yourself into knots for approval. What matters is that your days feel like yours again. Let me tell you something. Some of the strongest people I've ever known weren't loud. They weren't always the ones giving speeches or demanding attention. They were the ones who quietly decided, "I will not spend another day in a space that costs me my peace." And they didn't announce it. They just lived differently. And you could feel it. That can be you. You don't have to fix anyone. You don't have to stay where you're not seen. You don't have to carry the emotional weight of every relationship. You can be kind and still say no. You can be loving and still choose distance. You can forgive and still walk away. And you can do it all without guilt. Because the most powerful thing you can do at this stage of life is choose peace. Choose stillness. Choose joy. Not because you're selfish, but because you've earned it. After all you've done, after all you've given, after all you've endured. It's your turn now. Your turn to laugh without looking over your shoulder, to rest without interruption, to enjoy without explanation, to live fully, richly, freely. And if anyone tells you that it's too late, smile gently and walk right past them. Because you're not just older, you're wiser. And there's no age limit on beginning again. Now, if this message touched something in you, if it reminded you of someone in your life, or maybe reminded you of yourself, I want to invite you to share your story. Leave a comment. Tell us what peace means to you. Let others hear your voice. You never know who might need it. And if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. There's more to come, more wisdom, more encouragement, more reminders that you are not alone on this journey. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope you walk away from this, not just with words in your mind, but with a little more strength in your spirit. You are still growing, still changing, still becoming, and I wish you a full and joyful life at any age. Take care of yourself.